Hello and welcome back to Mountain Goat Gaming. I'm Jay, joined by Sean and the lovely Danny
Danny.
Giles. Absolutely. So hopefully today we are going to do our best at kind of giving you a bit of a preview slash overview of TabletopCon that we recently, both Danny and I, went to. Give you a list of like the list breakdowns, a bit more in depth for first, second, and third. And then Danny and I are going to talk about our games and clutch moments and what happened. And then at the end, we're going to talk a little bit about the meta, if we can even think about the meta for Queensland moving forward. So,
And
yeah, it
I'll
should be
just
good.
be here looking pretty.
Yeah.
Oh,
Danny, do you want to introduce yourself and kind of let us know your background, really?
yeah. I got into the game a tiny bit before Jay. Introduced the man to it on my dining room table, and I think we played Radagast Alliance versus Angmar, just like a birder with some orcs and some eagles, and he was like, "I'm sold. This is so much fun." So we go into tournaments, really prioritizing, um, the hobby aspect. So that painting, because this community lends itself to people being proud of their armies.
Absolutely does.
And yeah, and the fluff. So like building a list that makes sense to the books, or the movies if you're so inclined. And Jay and I've come from this 40k background where playing competitively and playing good games is really important in that community, or else you're not necessarily going to have fun. Whereas Lord of the Rings, I just enjoyed that diving in and having a good time, and dice are dice. The last maybe 6 to 8 months since the Tassie GT last year, um, just been playing hard and just getting better at the game and enjoying the game.
Perfect.
So it's really great to be on here and talking about the game in a competitive standpoint. So making wise decisions, not necessarily fluffy decisions, is really cool.
Yeah. SBG as a whole, where it's such an easy game to get into, but it's really, really hard to master.
Yep.
And I think Danny and I are now at the point where, like, literally in this garage is our play, our play testing room, where it's like we try and build the most filthy things and talk our games out and talk about movements before it actually happens, and then try to think three turns ahead. Is our attempt of mastering.
Tournament talks. Can I just say, Jay's doing a stellar job getting these beautiful pieces of artwork and making these PowerPoints. So I hope that everyone watching enjoys our little presentations. But yeah, big up the goats. Let's move on. So tournament talk, TabletopCon is the big one. Oh, I'll move this over to this side now.
Do you want to give us a bit of a recap, the format of the event and basically what happened?
So event TO'd by Liam from Noobs, did an awesome job. 5 games over 2 days, 3 in the first day, 2 in the second day, 800 points, using the veto system. So randomly rolling games, the missions for each round. So not a pool, randomly rolling from each pool. So 1 dice for a pool, 1 dice for the mission. And there are 100 points up for grabs for the league. Overall, awesome event. Really well run.
Yeah.
And Queensland's quite lucky because we tend to get those near 30 numbers, if not pushing into the 30s really consistently. So it's absolutely massive. That's what you want, those consistent turnouts.
Come on, Queensland, keep it going.
Well,
Big up the boys. Get up the Lions. Let's go.
I do think it's worth mentioning as well, the way that the Queensland League points work is 80 points are our fluffy, like league points. 80 league points are the fluffy events where you can just bring unpainted armies, have a bit of fun. There's a real theme to the event. And then it's stepped up to 100 points. So typically, if you were to compare it to the GBHL, our 100-point league events are similar to or exactly the same as their 90 points. And then in Queensland, our 120 points are the GBHL's hundreds.
Yep.
So, yeah.
And we only have 4 120-point tournaments each year, and really the only stipulation to them is they must be 2-day events. So we really, really want to get as many people in. We want to make it more than just a tournament, but like a big community gathering and getting everyone there, having a bit of fun. And then there's a bit of a competitive side to it all. So it's a little bit for everyone. All right, jumping into our next slide. We are looking at Danny's third place list. So obviously you've come
Spoilers.
third. Absolutely
Spoilers.
massive. It's a really good turnout. So run us through your list, my guy. Oh, that's a
So firstly,
beautiful award.
This is the trophy that I dropped in the driveway immediately when I got home.
The ultimate disrespect.
Driving. So the list is interesting. So there's a gentleman in the US. I don't know a name. You'll have to forgive me. He does have a blog that he does that's the Dunlending War Cry. And I saw his list he took to, I think it was Adepticon, the most recent big event in the US, that was 750. And he had Saruman Grima, and he loves Dunland. So he had Goroth, Frida, and the Oathmaker, and he ran all Wildmen, all Orcs with Spears. And I saw that list and I was like, that's a bit of me. Like, that's such a nice list. And I thought, how can I make that a list that's mine, for starters? And then how can I make it a list that I can play well? So it started off with Saruman, Ugluk, Goroth, and Vrashku. And then it had the Orcs and it had the Wildmen instead of pikes, and it had crossbows. And the list was great. And Jay mentioned, he's like, well, maybe you could try pikes for Fight 4. And I didn't like the loss of numbers, played a bit more. And then I was like, you know what, I really do want that Fight 4. I played a couple of Iron Hills games and I'm like, oh, that would just change the speed of the game a bit. So I went for pikes, loved it. And then like 2 days before submission, Jay's like, what about Berserkers? And I was like, you know what, I can drop a pike and a Wildman, take a Berserker. So I leaves like 2 guys and I get 2 Berserkers, Courage 7, backfield, like late game, which is the list likes to play to time in a tournament. And it likes to be on objectives when it dies. And if I'm breaking, which I will because I have a bunch of D3 guys in the front line, having Courage 7 sitting in the backfield is invaluable.
Yeah, they're really good objective cappers, and a lot of people don't use them that way. They love the 2 attacks, send them into their opponents, try and kill stuff with them. But if you just have, you've got how many in there? 2, if I'm not mistaken?
Only 2. Only 2.
Yeah, if you've got 2, Courage 7, if they're going to get shot at, they're suddenly D6, and they've got that Fearless to Pain. So they're brilliant for sitting on, whether it's back objectives or forward objectives, just hanging out, going, I'm not going anywhere. So, yeah,
absolutely,
great inclusion there.
It's being veto, it's like if I get unlucky with dropping a mission, they just go on the line and they sit with, then they go double piked, you get 4 attacks and you sit on a flank and you suddenly start to do that envelopment, which is just loves. Like the more dice you get at strength 4, like you're just going to start to snowball.
Yeah,
so that's great. Yeah, the Oathmaker, he's there for the Fearless. There's like 17 Wildmen. So it's, that Fearless is huge, especially when you're considering people are going to bring Black Numbs, they're going to bring Azog, they're going to bring a Balrog, they're going to bring whatever. Just giving like a 5-point guy to one of those characters that they then have to spend a resource on to get away from is huge. Goroth is self-explanatory.
Auto include almost really.
He's an auto include. You always do it. Like if he's not stopping a big hero from combating, or he's sitting in front of him, he is then munching troops, and he'll do it all game, every game, until you break. And then if he's my Goroth, he's leaving. He's run. He's just had enough. He's killed 10 dudes, and he's like, you know what?
I'm tired. I'm going. Cheers. I've done my job.
Yeah.
Yep. The interesting include for me, is Ugluk.
Course,
you don't often see Ugluk outside of Ugluk's Scouts or whatever it's called, the Legendary Legion. So what was your thinking behind him for this list?
Yeah, of course. So I played a bunch of games with Vrashku, and his shooting is great. It's cute. Like the 2 shots with the crossbow with might on a 3+, awesome. But 9 times out of 10, the list is going to break regardless of if I shoot into combat or not.
Yeah.
And there'll come a point where I need to get my crossbows, who are also Urukai, into combat. And I get them to combat, I get Vrashku to combat, and all he has as a heroic action is March. and accuracy. The march is great because I need that in the list. It can't just sit there and be shot. But, like accuracy, cute. Like I sort of didn't want to rely on Goroth as the only striker. If I swap to Ugluk, he has strike and he has march, which are the two of the best. He has the little head taker ability, which is an add-on in this list. It's not the focus. Because, Saruman passes on courage 7, he's already auto-passing. It's just that march strike combo with 3 might. That's where I've gone for. So it's like I've got Saruman he will reliably transfix someone a turn, and he'll do it all game. Yeah. And if Goroth is tying up a hero that I necessarily can't transfix, so say we're talking about the Glorfindel, or we're talking about Elendil, or someone with resistant, I throw Goroth in there, and then a hero I want to try and kill, I can transfix, or I can channel transfix, which I really like. I like that channel compel, channel transfix, because Saruman's might you can use for moves, you can use for a channel, which I've done against Gwai here multiple times. The man goes to like attack 1 when you charge him and fight 4. So it's like I don't have to strike, but if I have to strike, I will, and it gives me just that extra might, or if I fail that striker. Yeah, that's the include. It's not the head taker, it's the march strike combo.
Yeah, that's fair. Because I feel like some people would almost lean towards Maher. Personally, Maher just doesn't cut the mustard for me. No, he seems really good on paper, but then in practice, he always just whiffs it.
He's he's Ugluk. He's Goroth off a wish. We have Goroth at home.
Timu
It's like, no, it's not here. It's just not ideal.
Yeah, that's fair.
But the list, I want to take Saruman because he's just $1 million. He's expensive, so it's like, how do you make him work? You put a bunch of dudes in front of him. You do that through Wildman, and it's like, how do I make the Wildman worth taking? You go the Oathmaker and Pikes. You cut some points on the Orc with the banner, and then Grima is Grima. Like, the utility of that model is, I just don't think people understand it, and we'll get to that during my games. Yeah. Jay learned, like, we do a lot of open games here, so I didn't get to unleash it. I'd unleash it and explain, and then Jay goes, "Oh my god!" Like, it's ridiculous. Like,
I was gonna say, a lot of people tend to use Grima and put him with their opponent because that's one of his rules.
Of course.
Is that what you were going to talk about a little bit later on?
So I think it's really important to understand when you want him with your opponent and when you want him with Saruman. And I'll get into that during my games and breaking down when I make that decision. But his utility is huge because you put odds Grima, then you have a 2-minute conversation with your opponent at the table about what he does, and then turn 4 they forget, and then there's a whole lot of scrambling, and he's just priceless.
He's also really, really pesky in Storm the Camp, so.
Yes, he is, sir. Storm the camp. Every objective-based mission, he is brilliant.
He is a pesky little shit. All right, well.
Sean, I think this, sorry, just to butt in there, I think this is a really good kind of throwback or throw forward whenever we release the videos to our conversation about list building.
Yep.
This is a list revolved around Saruman. I can't stress that enough. Danny's decision here was, I'm not going to take Crossbow Spam for Isengard and just have a boring weekend. I'm going to try and use Saruman, who in my opinion is the best caster in the game, for his reliability. At least he's throwing 2 dice, 1 free and then a reroll, equals 2 dice every single cast before you even touch his will or resources. That side alone is great.
Yep.
The inclusion of both Ugluk and Goroth are 2, I'm not going to say like subpar heroes, but they're 2, let's call like medium heroes. So like in the Dalamir, Suladan rank.
Yeah, good mid-range heroes.
Yeah, 2 of them are going to equate to the, what someone like an elf player would want for Thranduil as well, as like your big hitters. So Danny's kind of spread the power in those two hitters just to kind of help, in those rough situations for when the characters, he needs to block my characters from doing, what my characters want to do. And the final piece to this list is we spoke a lot about making your opponent make choices, and the more choices you give your opponent, the more likely they're going to make a mistake.
Yep.
This list is so crucial for finding those mistakes and exploiting them. And Grima is such a key piece for those little mistakes. Like we'll find out a little bit later, but I think it's really important to note here for the list building aspect, genuinely, if you're considering running 800 points, Isengard with Saruman, I think this is a list you could definitely start off and then build to your own flavor.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah,
so
100%.
everything here is strength 4. If they win a fight, chances are they're killing. So I definitely think it's a really good baseline list. And if you get good at playing Saruman and knowing what Saruman does where, it just exacerbates how much you can actually, like what you can pull off with this list.
I think it's key to note as well, the strength 4 across the army, all of the wildmen have the axe option.
Yeah.
And because they're D3, they are piercing striking essentially every combat unless I'm trying to stall you.
Yeah, that's fair. Just two quick things before we move on to second place at TabletopCon is one, I just don't feel like we gave the Oathmaker enough credit as one of the best move batteries in the game. 55 points, he's not going to do anything else apart from make dudes fearless, and that's 3 points of might for move.
It's 3 points
sensational.
of might, pulling heroic strength and diving into the Balrog.
It's bonkers. But hey, look, 800 points with Saruman, 47 models, a boatload of might. It's a stellar list. And that final thing that I wanted to jump onto was running Saruman. How do you find him in the sense of his barrier to entry into playing him? Because he's quite a tricky model to use early on.
I think if you were trying to learn the game, you should avoid Saruman.
Love it. Love it. That's exactly what I would say.
If you're trying to push yourself as a player, and Jay's just shit himself. Sorry. Trying to push yourself as a player and your ability to use magic, you take Saruman the Stinky.
Our second place, we have Erin, who normally runs Dark Denizens, Spider Spam, but has recently, she's been changing things up a little bit. So we've got Mortal Orc Spam, 65 models, 800 points, Goroth, Gorbag, Kardush, Guritz, and Muzgur. And then just a couple of Morgul Stalkers. I say a couple, there's like 8 or something. 2, 4, 6, 8. There's 10 Morgul Stalkers. And then just a boatload of orcs.
I'll speak to this list pretty quickly. Just in the interest of time, I've messaged Erin and just kind of asked for a bit of a preview. She said overall the list performed really well. She was quite surprised, better than what she expected. The only change that she would make moving forward is that she would drop Goroth. I think Goroth initially was the thought process behind Goroth here is he's a really great beat stick hero who effectively, theoretically, will never die because there's 65 orcs and he can just keep on smashing orcs on 2+ and never lose that last wound. So she's going to drop Goroth because, let's be real, he's only 2 attacks and his might does, evaporate very quickly, and then replace him with Grishnak. Now, what that does is that gives her 15 points to upgrade a lot of her basic shield orcs that you see there into Morannon orcs, and then Muzgur becomes the leader. So what she found, especially in our game, was, sorry, spoiler alert, the strength 4 with the Stalkers was really impactful and it made a massive difference in a horde specifically. So if she can, I suppose, increase a lot of her strength 3 to strength 4 guys by just 15 points, why wouldn't she, right? It's a bit of a no-brainer. So the list overall is very scary, and I think the sleeper pick here is the drummer.
Yeah.
So what's happening is
drummer
that,
and
for example,
big.
she's playing Reconnoiter, she's playing Whole Ground, whatever. She's moving 12 inches straight up, boom, 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 and saving might because she can just move 9 inches straight away. So it's very, very powerful. And don't forget, the drummer's still got a 12-inch 12-inch AOE of who gets to move an extra 3 inches. So it's very quick.
Really liked her pick of getting rid of what was it? Who was it? Goroff, moving him on, bringing in Grishnak. There we go. Because you're getting a similar killing output with Grishnak. Because you got 65 models at 800 points. You're outnumbering your opponent. You're gonna be able to trap. And old mate has the backstabber special rule, so he's getting those +1s to wound. So you're essentially getting those extra Moran and Orcs for that extra strength 4, but then you're also getting old mate, who's going to put out a very similar amount of killing as Goroff, and he's got 3 points of might, so it's big. Cool. It's very big.
The extra comment was that, I don't know if Jay's mentioned it, but Aaron mentioned that they would take Musgur as the leader. Which I really like. Completely agree with. I think that is such a good change to such a good list. It just amplifies it.
Yeah, and I personally love a leader that sits back and just hangs out, whether it's a support piece or all hail Denethor. Let me just hide my leader behind a building and let my opponent forget about him. Like, that's...
He's like, I'm gonna go crazy, man.
I've got here, it's fine. If I go crazy, what are you gonna do? Nothing. There's no one near me. Yeah, but... but no, they've done very, very well to hit second place with this list. Absolutely huge. Also, big up the double banner. I do love double banners.
How's the freehand on those banners there?
It's freehand on one of them, because I'm pretty sure...
the Moranum one.
Yeah.
Sorry,
yeah,
it's hard to tell because it's so good it matches the...
I know, right? I know. And that display board. Beautiful. All right, we'll move on to first place, and...
Oh, don't worry about it. It's okay.
Yeah, we'll skip by it. We'll skip by it. We don't need to, do we?
First game.
Oh my god, who would have thunk it? It's Sir Jay. He's got himself first place with a list that people said was shit.
List.
But yeah, so Jay, run us through this list.
So speaking of, leaders that just hang behind the lines and never really get in combat,
Gladys
this list started initially with Malbeth, Arbadui, Gwaihir, and Galadriel. Galadriel had the mirror, and then Gwaihir picked up the mirror and did Gwaihir things. The problem with that is bird bath. Very quickly, I found out that I was being way too risky with Gwaihir, in the sense of he never died because you had to do 6 wounds then and there in one combat and pray that I don't roll the 6, right? When it happened, it was always a case of my opponent would always make sure that they could do the 6 wounds, right? They would strike up, I'm out of might, and then they just went with all their army. That's fine. But Gwaihir very quickly became the biggest letdown of this list, in the sense of I was expecting him to do too much for what he can do, right? As soon as you touch Gwaihir, he's down to 2 attacks, and the chances of you rolling a 6 without burning might or a banner, which typically speaking he'll be away from my banner, is very, very low. So Gwaihir became this scalpel piece who would jump, either play the objectives or hold a certain flank or help fortify one of my weaker flanks because the main force is fighting over here. I think the sleeper pick of this list is the Sentinel, alongside the Galadriel Court. The Sentinel provided so many options and versatility for me. Like, for example, if I needed to tie up a troll, so it didn't just the troll brute, so it didn't just come whacking into my lines, the Sentinel would go, and all of a sudden an Arnor warrior can do anything he wants and just charges in and stops that completely. Correct. Or like in another game, I would just look at a hero and go, "What's that courage? Oh, hang on, there's a chance here." And it turns out, certain heroes don't roll that high, and then I can move them the full distance. So the Sentinel was really helpful for that. But this list as a whole is a real soup bitzer list, in the sense of I took Arnor for the D6 fight 4 brick, 24 dudes, and then I'm backing that up by fight 5, fight 6. So when evil heroes come into me, deal with my fight 6 and strike up if you will. And even then, I'm still defense 6 sitting in front of you.
So, Jay, just 2 questions on your list build.
Yeah.
Number 1, you mentioned you were taking Malbeth.
Oh, yeah.
So what was the thought process behind swapping Malbeth for the captain?
Yeah. I don't kill very well with this list, being strength 3. So I found that I had to try and get to positions in the board like quicker or as quick as my opponent was, so I could sit in more places quickly. Like, hopefully that makes sense. So I'm getting up the board quicker with the march. And Malbeth, I didn't want to have to rely on sometimes the 5-ups go off and you only lose 2 models, and that has happened, and I've courted someone. Or I can reliably every single game get a march and be up in movement. Movement wins games, and I opted for the move.
Yeah, no, that's a fair shout, and that's something that you touched on in a previous video that we did. Actually, 2 things you touched on was the Sentinels. One, any model that you have the opportunity to play your opponent's games, to move their models, whether it be with Spectres or oh god, what are these things called again? Sentinels. If you can move your opponent's models, you're absolutely giggling. But also, you spoke about when you're playing this kind of non-killy list, and you're a block formation, you want to find that location on the board, and you want to get there as quick as you can, and you want to sit there, and then from there you start playing out whether it's an objective game to move on to objectives, or you focus down one particular hero or a monster or so on. So as much as I'm not a huge advocate for taking March, I think March is definitely the right choice in a force like this.
So the second question I have, we'll touch on briefly. So we spoke about the march from the captain. So when you ally Arnold, you lose the Fearless.
Yeah.
And you just end up with an evil Courage 2 army that hit by Harbinger.
Yeah.
Goes to Courage 1. So what's the thought process for a matchup like that?
Well, eventually when you roll 10 courage tests, one gets
you roll enough
you roll enough courage tests, eventually dice.
Bro's got 41 models, it's fine.
Is it not perhaps the Courage 5, Courage 6 elves?
Yeah, and that
it's the elves.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was the I suppose the last addition to this list as well. Is I didn't have as many elves in this initially. And then what I ended up doing was going from 30 Armor Warriors up to about just over the 12, 14 mark of elves. So if I need to go into a Harbinger army, I'm happily going to put those six Gladron Warriors. They're going to frontline it and go in, and I'll just spear support them with the Arnor, and that's okay, because typically speaking, I'm going to increase and throw more dice at my opponent in the fights to stack them in my favor. Plus, I've got Arbadui and the captain, and also Guai here.
Right.
So
both Courage 5, Courage 7?
Yeah. I've got enough. Who that was Courage 7?
Guai here, man.
Oh, sorry.
Is it Courage 7 or Courage 8? You're like, Arbadui,
Arbadui found so many courage tests, but it's still the case of this is a real toolbox army, and to be honest with you, I have learned so much about the game by playing this army, because I can't mess up. If I mess up, it's almost curtains, really. Yeah. It's almost curtains, because I can't claw back. I have no last minute wild card that I can quickly throw on the table. I need to be playing turns ahead. And a little tidbit for anyone looking to play Guai into anything, because Guai Lothlorien is such a combo. You have to be really realistic with what your expectations of this bad boy is. This bad boy can win you games and does win you games. However, if you're relying on this bad boy to be like a Gulliver, you're going to be bitterly disappointed.
Now, I will very quickly argue why I think Guai here should be played the exact same as Gulliver.
Okay.
So Gulliver has the 4 attacks, and he has the +1 for monstrous charge. He is also a glass cannon, because if you hit him, he dies. You have the opposite effect with Guai here, who has 2 attacks to 3. But if you hit him, there's not a good chance you're going to kill him, because
he's
he's
still
D8.
D8, that's right.
He's D8. So
and fight 8.
Yeah, and he's fight 8. So you play him like a scalpel, is what Jay is trying to say. You pick your
100%.
And you pick them wisely, because if you just throw him in, turn 3, he'll be dead.
Yeah.
And that's how, honestly, in practice games, that's how I lost him.
Yeah.
My expectations of Guai here were that of let's choose a better model. I don't know. What's an absolute wrecking ball? Bolg, Azog, right? That's where my expectations of Guai here were. I can just throw this guy in, fight 8, I'll get the 6. You never get the 6, right? And making that in the back of your mind really prevalent, I think, is what needs to happen with Guai here. So Spider Queen, Gulliver, and Guai here, scalpel monsters that will win you games when played correctly. And Galadriel Sentinel combos are massive for amplifying Guai here's effect.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so moving into Danny's recap of day 1.
God, the whole recap.
The whole recap. Just day 1 though.
Oh, I need.
We won't go too in depth into anything. We'll keep it.
I'll just give you. I'll give you
the highlights. Yeah.
Yep. Awesome. So we'll use Maddie's beautiful army as Liam's. So round 1, I got paired with Ethan, who was running Ministry, and I get to the table, and I find out that Ethan had unfortunately had a car accident on the way to the event, and he was all okay. He just wasn't going to make it to the event. So Liam, being the TO, advised me he was going to play me, and as a buybuster. And I said, "Oh, awesome! So as the buybuster, am I going to get? What points do I get?" And he said, "No. We're going to play a game. And whatever points you get, that's what you get, because that's just how it's going to be." And I was like, "That's awesome, because I'm going to get to actually play my list fully." So we vetoed, and we got Destroy the Supplies. So we had Thorin's company allied with Radagast, and he had Bilbo with the ring. So I was like, I'm going to deploy Grima with Thorin, and I put him right on the edge of the Thorin's company because he grouped them together. And I won priority, so I shuffled Vorg. So I was like, I need to play for all 3. He doesn't have enough models to stop me getting to all 3. And I want Liam to make decisions and me react. And I chucked Grima onto the far supply. And I just sat there and I went, "All right, your turn, Liam." And he starts moving and he goes, Grima can't destroy suppliers, can he? And I was like, he's my model, man. Like, you just treat him as friend. Like, you can't shoot or fight him. And he was like,
Where's the lighter?
And Grima's just like fumbling around trying to find his matches. Like, and he's like, fuck. So like, Radagast, I think he spent 2 turns just throwing like Will from his store, guaranteeing transfixes on Grima. While he got a...
Would that not turn Grima?
There is nothing in any FAQ, and there's nothing in the rules to state that it changes him. I'm happy to be corrected, but
let us
just
know
having him
down. In the comments.
Please let me know, because if it didn't impact this game, because but I did win this game, but when the objective was burnt, I had 12 guys around it, and they helped to burn it. Yeah. It just that Liam had to put a dwarf over there, and I think the only casualty on Liam's side that game was Radagast.
Damn.
Ironically, it was my Crabane who killed him. So birds are not friends. They are not friends.
They were bin chickens, bro.
There'll be a common theme across this review of my day is the birds are not friends. So great. I think it ended 3-0. He might have got a break, but it was a minor win for the first round, which I think in a tournament.
Wait, so was that a minor win towards you?
To me, yes.
Yeah,
so I ended up burning that objective where Grima was, and the guy started flooding and the game ended. Round 2, there is a correction here. In my haste, it was an assassination that we played. It was a clash by moonlight.
Ooh, spicy.
Yeah. So just to clarify, Ben, who is also one of our sparring partners,
Mountain Goat,
he was running a list we call Who's Watching Kana. Now, in our practice game, we answered the question, no one is watching Kana because I killed them all. In our vetoing, we had to make I had to make the decision on what was going to be the least painful for me to run into 18 3+ bows with reroll wounds.
Yeah.
And I thought Flash by Moonlight because I can stay out of the shooting. and Saruman can dart in and out, and he can make that decision. So I think it was a really tough game because we played on one of Evan Wright. We played on one of his awesome boards. He supplied a bunch of terrain for the event. Big shout out to him.
He's our local terrain dealer.
His terrain is next level.
Yeah.
And we played on I think it was there was a Gondor theme board, and there was this big piece of ruin, and Ben fit all of his bow models on this piece, and his betrayer. It was a stair big enough for the betrayer to ride up and get onto, and he sat there and he went, "Let's play." I was like, "This sucks because I've got to run at you." Now he played really well because he protected his heroes. The big thing he could have changed in this game, which would not have made for a fun game, was he had room to put all his heroes behind the terrain piece, and he goes, "You're going to run at me to get points, and I'm going to get to shoot you the whole time." He didn't do it. The second mistake he made was his magic with the betrayer. So Saruman was darting out and doing magic constantly, as he should, consistently. And I was compelling models forward to try and combat off of, to propel guys into combat, to just start getting me places. So he was chucking black darts and inconsistent spells at models and wasting will whilst doing the poison. After speaking after the game, we agreed that's not the right play if you're trying to win the game, which is absolutely fine. Ben played well with what happened. The crux of the game came when he'd wounded Ugluk, but hadn't killed him. And I was like trying to compel Suladan out because there were so many points buried in that one model. A, banner, B, leader, C, there's the hero kill. And then he just rushed him to the back of the board, and Goroth got a combat off, and the Oathmaker got a combat off, and Ugluk was transfixed looking at his hand, like tripping. And there was like the 10-minute called, so last turn. And the Crabane was sitting in a position to potentially charge the Betrayer. Now, you will find the Betrayer had already spent 4 will in the previous turn to cast a black dart on Ugluk because Ben had heard the time, not the turn.
Oh, okay.
There was 1 left.
Now, the black dart had failed. No, sorry, he got the black dart off. Ugluk had 1 will, as he does, as is in the rules. Now, I think you'll find if you shout to the room, "Do it for Ugluk," when you're rolling a resist for Ugluk,
that's what comes up.
You will roll a 6. And I rolled a 6. So Ugluk survived. So not a shit kick. Now, the Crabane rolled a clean 8 for his courage to charge the Betrayer in the last turn of the game with Harbinger. He was in, and he charged,
1 will
he
left.
charged the Betrayer. He had 1 will left, so I went,
done. Thank you.
and then I looked at the points. He'd broken me, and I was like, I need to break you. So everyone was in. So in the last turn of the game, the Crabane made Betrayer go, and Goroth broke him.
Let's go.
So it was another minor win.
That's what you want. 2 minor wins early.
Submarine.
Dude's yellow submarining it. He's joined the Beatles.
Now, third game was probably, I'd argue, the toughest of the day. So we ended up playing, not Divide and Conquer. I don't know what Jay's done here. We played Reconnoiter.
Oh,
Reconnoiter
jeez.
against David Azog Legion with Azog on Warg, Ogre, Double Bat, Berserker Spam, and Wild Warg.
So he's in really good position to win that game. He's got a lot of 8-inch plus moving models. They're quite powerful as well. So he's sitting pretty to just gun it up the board to get a couple of dudes off.
Correct. So I think it's important here to talk about where I've deployed Grima. In this game, I'm going to deploy Grima with the enemy because I have to get my models off of your board edge. So Grima went with Azog, and he came on with David's warband. So David had Azog's warband with Berserkers and Bats. He had Fimble the Hunter with the Wild Wugs and Hunter Orcs, and he also had a Goblin Mercenary warband with 8 Goblin Mercenaries.
Oh, that's really good for Reconnoiters. Oh,
Yes,
this is his game to lose, isn't it?
I was
This really is.
So I was like, cool. So Grima walked on with Azog at the back, and David's decision on the day was Grima, and I can only put this down to David has not played against Grima enough, because I can tell you at the start of the game what he does, but from then on, it's on you. And he was like, Grima is not going to keep up with my army, so I'm going to move forward. So
Yep.
Grima walked on the board.
Walked off.
And walked off. So turn 2, I had
Struck
a
the Yui.
3-point advantage. Yeah. So it was like turn 2, we're 10 minutes into the round. I had 3-point advantage, and I had an hour and 50 to win the game.
You just had to hold him up. That's your game plan. Stop him from moving. Get to him as quick as possible and stop anything. Yeah.
Oh, I unfortunately had a woodland terrain piece that was 2 inches from my board edge.
Mercs would have loved that.
So the Oathmaker sat in that terrain piece with his warband and the crossbows for the entirety of the game until the last 2 turns. The next closest piece of terrain that he could fit his models on was, I think it was maybe 10 to 11 inches away from my board edge. So I posted up. I managed to kill the bats in turn 4 before they got to combat with a combination of crossbow Saruman. And I compelled the ogre forward, and Uglak killed him.
Big up the Uggs.
Big up Uggs. Now you'll see the dice rolling in the top left corner there at the PowerPoint. This was Azog charging into a single Uruk, 2 Uruk, sorry. And he just rolled that for the heroic combat, which I think summarized his game, because his dice did leave the chat for a good amount of the time. When he needed to punch through, Azog couldn't do it, and his dice didn't quite let him. It was just silly, the combination. I think it was Uruks. It was something that needed 4s to wound or whatever it was. But it was
just
to the
not
point
happening.
where I asked, can I take a photo of this dice roll? And he did really well. He got his wargs onto one flank and started to crumble, to the point I had to get the Crebain and Saruman into combat, which is risky biz. You don't, just a tidbit, if you are running Saruman, you do not want him in combat at all, unless you're backing him.
Last resort.
It is your last call. And he was in combat for 2 or 3 turns, and he was just bonking wargs, except for the last turn he lost to combat and didn't take a wound. And unfortunately for David, time was called, and he just failed a couple of courage checks for his gob mercs, and he did want them in a terrain piece and was hoping to pull my guys off of it, and he ended up in the piece that was a bit further away from my board edge. So another minor victory. So day 1, 3 minor victories.
3 minors.
Backing them up.
Sitting pretty.
Mode.
Sitting pretty.
Yeah.
We'll jump on to Jay's day 1. We'll just go quick look over them before we move into day 2.
100%. So first game was up against Evan. He was playing a skew Azog list. So we had Azog, Warg, Bolg, Warg, and all 3 trolls plus a bat. So the Scythe Troll, the Club Troll, the Troll Brute, and a cheeky bat. We'll play Destroy the Supplies. So basically what I did is I grabbed my army and I went Arvadui and 12 merry men, drift, and try to grab a supply, which is forcing Evan with low model count to split and make the choice of what's he going to do. And then from there, he managed to sneak it back over to one side, from which point I looked at the Sentinel, and the Sentinel went, hello, and then flew over. And then from there, I managed to get Guai here and a heap of other dudes on there to secure the combat. So I called the combat a heroic combat with Guai here. So Guai here, turn 3, was on Evan's supply. And a really pivotal moment there was in the middle of the board on the central supply. Evan actually made a choice with Bolg to move him over to try and help grab Arvadui's warband instead of trying to target or at least threaten Guai here from that heroic combat to destroy the supplies. And then from there, to be completely honest with you, I just had Guai here. He jumped from that supply, burnt it. The next supply, burnt it. Like I said before, I put the Sentinel with an Arnold Warrior to just hold the Troll Brute up. Managed to get my guys onto the Troll Brute, killed him pretty easily. And then from there, I managed to just tar pit the 2 Trolls and Azog with a couple of Arnold Warriors and Arvadui in the corner, just long enough for the rest of my main force to start walking through. So it ended up being a 12-0 win to me, which, you know, was good because I was a little nervous. If Evan had have clumped and gone, I was like, yeah, let's do this. Then into round 2, I was versing my younger brother Matt and his Easterlings. So my Easterlings.
He is the bane of Jay in tournaments, and if you have to see it to believe it. These are the most tense games you will ever witness, and I will never see your brother play better than he's playing against you in a tournament.
Yeah. So this was a perfect scenario for the Easterlings, pretty much. So we're playing to the death. It was all killing missions, basically.
Kill.
From there, yeah, I was really lucky in how the terrain was posted. So the hedges were over half the Emperor's height. So the Emperor had to do some cheeky movement shenanigans and risky maneuvers to try and get over the hedges because the gaps between hedges actually weren't big enough for his base to fit through. So I managed to choose sides and put him literally in a corner where it was like hedge space, hedge space, hedge space, hedge space. And it was really, really good. So from there, I basically played cat and mouse with the Easterling force. And my bows, that's the best they've ever done in my life, that game. For example, late game, 3 bow shots over a bit of a hedge, boom, 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 3 Easterlings dead. Triple sixes, baby. Yeah, Jesus. Man, it was that type of rolling. It was very good, which was great because it then put a psychological effect on Matthew to be like, oh my God, I'm losing good models to the death. I need to do something right now. I lost 3 or 4 models that game. I basically kept Rutabi in check, and Borgir only got a couple of cheeky tremors off on me. And a really important part of that game was Matthew targeted the wrong model, and as a result, didn't manage to kill my banner off a tremor, which is a really big lesson for him to learn in this scenario because there was banner VPs.
Yeah,
wouldn't have changed it. It just would have meant that we had been 1. I would have won by 1 instead of winning by 3. Sorry. And then from there, I managed to kill Rutabi on the very last turn with bows.
Very nice. They're coming in big.
It was really good. So basically, Guai here went in. The Dragon Emperor with his Blade Wrath just went whoom. Matthew trapped Guai here. GG. Guai here's done. Then from there, it was a case of my guys were just able to hold the line, push him back, or get kills. Because the way the board was positioned, the pike wall for Eastlings couldn't work the typical way that a pike wall would work. And I just leveraged my shooting as much as I possibly could because I didn't have to engage. The only thing that was against us was the clock. It was the last turn, the last 2 minutes that I just got the break on Matthew, and then as a result, managed to eke the win from there. Moving into my third game was against Erin. Erin's currently at the top of the ladder, and her and I have danced around each other for quite a while now, not quite playing off at many tournaments. Except for this one. And I was super excited to play her because I just wanted to see who's going to get it. And 65 Mordor Orcs in whole ground against my list. And I was like, shit, how am I going to pull this out of my butt?
It's like, I took March for a reason.
Exactly. Yeah, and this is literally why I will never take Malbeth in this list, right? March was crucial, and it managed to get me to a point where Erin got 3 of her warbands in the corner, where all 3 were affected by the march. Guritz can call, the drum. Guritz can call the march. So there's 18 orcs moving 12 inches, while the other Bajillion are moving 9, which immediately means that she's got one more turn and she is holding that center, and I have to break through. My list, even though I kill her majority on 5s, still doesn't kill this list very well. And then finally, I think the main point of this game was Guahir holding the front force of the main entrance for Kingdom of Durak, whereby the 18 orcs that I just said were charging in. I managed to get Guahir and just go, why? You're not going any further. Just did a Gandalf, yeah? And then from there was 2 bits of terrain on either side of Guahir. So in order for models to go through, they had to charge Guahir. Guahir wasn't getting wrapped at least until another 2-3 turns, depending on how I roll, whilst the rest of my army are like just trying so desperately to catch up. I took some heavy losses that game, but the models that I managed to get into the center were a lot more than what Aaron was. And that was simply because Galadriel could literally go, cool, I'm going to compel Goroth, in this case, over to the corner. He's going to block one entrance into the terrain, so that way orcs have to jump over the little fence to try and get into the center, which is, it's still dice. While my guys are just walking through the main entrance and kind of just going for it. So there was not a lot of...
I was gonna say it's almost like, in a way, the Battle of Thermopylae in a way, because there are a lot of entrances, but there's the main gate from memory. It's like 3 models abreast can get through. So Guahi's sitting there stopping that. The rest of them, if you can funnel your guys in, you put 1 Arnor warrior in the doorway, 1 spear supporting him behind. You go, cool. I'm fight for D6. Good luck getting through me.
Way of the door.
So I had models coming in. So Guahir was holding the main floodgates. I had my guys trying to pour in. Aaron had a couple of guys running over the hurdles and then jumping in to hold my guys in the middle. And interestingly, I had probably 3-4 turns where I literally killed 2, maybe 3 models. 80% of fights, but just could not kill. I was getting 3 highs left, right, and center, and it was infuriating. So I went, okay, I need to change this and just go on. Like that whole, I don't like to play with dice, I like to play with certainties as much as I can. So I started moving my other models in that were holding a flank into the center as quick as I can, because time is of the essence, right? And then just pouring into the middle. It wasn't until the last turn that my army actually did and worked with the averages, and I killed 14 models in the middle. Broker,
wow.
Yeah, good. I think that's a minor win on my half. So overall, very good. And I think for me as well, managing to kind of use terrain again, this is a bit of a theme, using terrain to my advantage when I know that I statistically will not outfight this army. I will not be able to get traps. They will. I will not be able to lose 12, 13 models and recharge. I'm down to my last if I lose that. Whereas Aaron's sitting there going, cool, bro, I got 56 more, like, let's go. And it's a scary thought. It's a really great oppressive list. It's a great skew, right? That's the sort of crap that I like running. But I also know how to stop a horde with my high quality models to make sure that they're not going to do what they want to do and get to where they want to do. Hence why movement wins games. And this is a great
movement and positioning are absolutely massive parts of this game. One of the hardest things to master in this game is deployment. But if you can deploy your army properly, you're on the front foot from the get-go. Now, I really liked what you said earlier about you don't like playing with dice, you like playing with certainties. And that's what this game is all about. It's all about mitigating bad luck. Every situation you're trying to get the most out of luck. Because it is a luck-based game, it is dice and whatnot, but everything you do is all about pushing that luck in your favor.
So round 4, I had Jacob with his Depths of Moria. So we had the Balrog, and it was a scary list. I've never played the Balrog before, ever. I know what it does, never played it. So ended up with Fog of War. I think a couple of the options were Seize the Prize with Microbane. And the other one was not favorable either. I know.
Capture and Control.
It wasn't favorable to me, so I just went, I won the roll-off. So we're not going to play that. You can pick between Fog of War or Capture and Control, Seize the Prize. And Jacob very wisely went, I don't want Crabane picking up
the objective early on.
So let's play Fog of War. So being the gentleman I am, I picked Greenman to protect and deployed him with him. And and so he had the Balrog and 3 captains.
Grima the Untouchable.
Yeah, and Grima the Untouchable. So I was like, Saruman just has to sit back. And I just crossbowed and Sorceress blasted captains all game. I got very lucky with magic on the Balrog, so I compelled it a couple of times.
Wow.
So I think
that is well lucky.
Yeah. So I think maybe it had 2 turns of combat, and one of those was against Gorov, which
Free rogue defense, baby. What are you gonna
yeah.
do?
So it was unlucky. Lucky for me with the just constant casting compel. Like you will whittle them down. But it's knowing when to do that, and it's when to target a model who's going to give you points. So I knew I picked Grima to protect. I picked one of his captains to kill, and I picked a terrain piece not on the center line, not just past the center line, but a little bit back, because I knew Grima will be able to wander eventually, and I also knew I had Crebain. So I spent the whole game just avoiding and trying to kill his captains because I can. So I think I killed 2 captains with shooting magic, and I killed 1 captain in combat with Ugluk. And then last turn of the game, I got Grima and my Crebain on my terrain piece to his 1 black shield. And he didn't get his terrain, he didn't get his kill, etc. He played it well, but it was a major victory, I believe. So yeah, it was a big jump.
Yeah. So from 3 minors into a major, that's putting you in a very nice position to dive into round 5.
Yes. Now I think we should talk about Jay's round 4.
Yeah, definitely.
And then we'll do a finale.
Yeah,
So 100% spoiler alert, Danny and I played final top table.
Spoiling round.
Whoa.
Yeah, I made this very late last night. But anyway, skip over.
Oh, that's the space bar. There you go.
Thanks, Sean. Oh, geez, my editing has been trash. Anyway, so this my 4th round was against Nick Franklin, absolute veteran and gentleman of the game. So I think he's, I love Nick. Nick, you did a great job this game. You did with what you could, right? The veto pool was capture control, fog of war, or seize the prize. Now, I immediately vetoed fog of war because I did not want to have to try and kill Gandalf the White. He was running Ministerieth with King Alistar, Shadowfax, Gandalf the White, and a heap of Gondor dudes. Yeah, hold the line. My list doesn't kill, as we know. D7 Ministerieth, Shadowfax, for Gandalf, re-rolling all his fate, didn't want to borrow it. And I was like, you know what, if we play capture control, we've got a game here, and I'm relying on Gwai here going green light, green light, green light, green light, the whole game. If we play seize the prize, it's really a case of who gets there first, Shadowfax or Gwai here. Now, a couple things went my way. Thing one, I put Nick on that side of the table. That side of the table was the shit side of the table. Reason being, there was a big old dirty bit of terrain, a big house.
A big dirty piece of terrain, which is the common theme of this video.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. And this is no exception. So I put him in there, and the reason why that terrain feature was so important was because it was then backed up by another house. So in other words, there was this tiny little wedge with a bit of barrels in the middle there. So Nick had to split his army to get to the middle of the board. Nick chose to play seize the prize instead of capture control because he did want to run the Gwaihi risk of green light, green light, green light, green light, and having to split his army because his army doesn't do well when it splits, as we'll find out. But by me putting him over there in seize the prize, I managed to just make him split anyway.
Yeah.
Now, I then won the roll off to go first, pulled the march, no worries, and I was a fully stacked Gwaihi with 3 will, 3 might, and I'm cooking. Here we go. Pull the march, and then just scream Gwaihi up, scream my guys up. There was a forest, and I moved all my elves through, and I was looking pretty good, right? Didn't pick up the prize.
Happens.
Now, from here, Nick then has gone, okay, this is exactly what I had planned for. Great. Now what I'm going to try and do is do Gandalf. He threw a couple of will into it, minded it up to a 6 to try and compel Gwaihi. Because Gwaihi had already moved in the march, he's moving 8 inches instead of the 6. pretty big, right?
Yes, that's massive.
So King Elisar and a couple of knights were pinned and primed, ready to just go wow into cacao. Except it didn't quite work that way. And I think what Nick kind of, I love that interpretation, right?
What's so good?
What Nick didn't, I suppose, consider is, bro, if I go down to 0 might and 0 will, I would do it. That's fine. As long as Guai survives, I can then do crowd control with my list, specifically Gandalf. I don't care if Elisar breaks me. If Guai has the prize, you can do whatever you want. I just need to make sure Gandalf is at bay. Easier said than done. Long story short, I managed to pick up the prize turn 2. Guai was compelled for a couple of turns. I then started just holding and bolstering my lines around Guai, so that way Elisar had to get through 2 ranks of guys before he could then get into me. Elisar whiffed, had to spend a couple of might to then get in. It happens when playing big heroes, but he still managed to get through those 2 lines very quickly. By the time Elisar got through those 2 lines, I had another 2 lines set up. And by the time he got through those 2 lines, the game was over. So that was a major victory because I got a 7-0.
Very good.
Which was, yeah. And then feeling pretty good. So the pictures that I have up on this slide here are purely the final. That's the only, Sean, I thought of you and I was like, I need to take photos for the pod.
It took him all weekend to think of taking photos. He's like, last game, he's like, oh shit, better take photos. Me, took 1 photo the whole weekend. It was a buy.
Yeah. So anyway, this was basically what the board looked like. So Danny and I were playing Divide and Conquer, top table. It was bittersweet in the sense of it was sweet because it's the first time we as sparring partners have played for top table. And it was bitter in the sense of one's going to win and one could, like what happened at you at Clash, or where one just
get
kind of
knocked down the table.
Out.
And you know, I'm looking at myself where it's like I've had 3 minor victories in the first day. That will, if I lose this game big, that's going to throw me down and I might lose top 10. And that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, that's where it is scary, where I touched on earlier about wanting that easier run in those earlier games. You can take those easier runs in the early game, but then that final game is a must. That's the game where you put all your thought into, you play as sweaty as possible, because with what happened to me at Clash, I've dropped from I was first at that point from memory. It was top table against Alex, who we previously had on the pod. Dropped from first or second down to 9th.
Yeah, big drop, man. Big drop.
Yeah. So this potentially could have happened to one of you guys here.
Yeah. Now I'd like to preface this whole tournament. I'd actually made a point, which I think this is an important concept for people going to a tournament maybe for the first time. There's a lot of tournaments I've been to where I play a game and it gets to turn like 11 and time's almost up. And then I open my book and I look at the mission. Now, this tournament, I prided myself on opening the mission and reading it and like making sure I understood where I was going to score points
the whole time, how I was going to score them. So when is my opponent going to break? Like, am I going to get a chance to win? Now, in this game, I was exhausted. We were hungover. We were hungover.
A little bit dusty, as they say.
It's a huge weekend playing a 2-day tournament. You're standing, you're thinking. Now, to start with, the beginning of the game, you have to declare if Grima is deploying with a warband and which warband. Jay deployed 2 warbands, and then he goes, "Where's Grima going?" Now,
but you've forgotten Grima. That's big.
I forgot to declare this. Now, Jay has very kindly given me the option to deploy it. I've respected that kindness by saying I will deploy it with Abadui, who is with Guai.
That was the most recent drop that I had just done.
This most recent drop, I said, I think that is the most fair because I know too much at this point deploying. If I had been proactive, in this mission, Grima has to always go with the captain.
Divide and Conquer, right?
It's Divide and Conquer. Jay needs to get to the middle. He needs to march to get there. I'm going to limit his ability to march by making him endure it once.
Yeah. Because for anyone who doesn't know, Grima has this ability within 3 inches, 6 inches, I can't remember. He makes you use a second point of might. And if I'm not mistaken, if you only have 1 might in your bank, you can't use any might to do anything. You must use an extra point of might.
It is only heroic actions.
Yeah.
Now,
so mighting stuff up doesn't affect it.
Correct. So you can might stuff up free. Divide and conquer, there are extra points for holding the middle objective, which you can see in that picture in the top right. So Jay managed to... So that was my first mistake. We started playing the turn. Jay rightly tried to transfix and sentinel. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead. So Jay had a captain and Galadriel, and he had Arvidui and Gwaihir with Grima. And then I had Saruman with Oathmaker, and I had Ugluk with Goroth. So Ugluk marched, and you managed to sentinel. Was that turn 1?
Goroth.
It was I can't remember. Jay was just like clever in his targeting of where he was magicking and sentinel. So he was moving my guys around. I managed to get a wound on Gwaihir turn 1 with crossbows.
With 2 fate gone.
Yeah, 2 fate gone.
And a might.
Wound and a might on Gwaihir. Turn 3, I moved my Saruman up and crossbows up to a position where I felt happy as Arvidui moved across the board from the far side. I moved first, and as I talk about, tired. No fault of my own was I tired. And Jay goes, I can sentinel that crossbow 6 inches towards Arvidui. And that puts Arvidui within 6 inches of the crossbow and of an Arnor warrior, which I'll combat off into Saruman, who's also within 6 inches of the crossbow. So Jay did this awesome combat move into Saruman turn 2 or 3, killed the poor man's horse.
Was hoping for the wound, man. Was hoping.
And I just had to cross my fingers and clench my butthole, and he didn't wound. And Saruman ended up on foot like turn 2 or 3.
As we can see in that middle picture on the Jay's lovely presentation, he's trekking on his boots.
Yeah, so that was an absolutely excellent play by Jay. And it's measuring everything. And I think it's important to declare intent and respect intent. But I just moved my guys. I didn't say anything to Jay, and he measured it and said, this is how it is. And I said, you are right, I made a mistake. And he capitalized on it, took my horse. And that just meant Saruman was going to sit in that corner for the whole game, because he's not going to sit there and try and fight his way out.
Which, to be honest with you, is actually a big deal, because it stops Saruman from moving 10 inches. Like, I've played Danny with this list 100 times, right?
Yeah.
Saruman will literally sit here in the train feature and just go 10 inches, or maybe 6, and then just jump back 4. Or he'll just go 10 inches and go, cool, you don't have any bows? I don't care. Now he's over here. Now he's over here. Like, taking his horse away is such a hit for Saruman.
Now, if I've done my maths correctly, he's got a 28-inch threat range for a lot of his magic when on horse.
Which then would subsequently, off the horse, go down to 24. Now, 4 inches doesn't sound like a lot, especially for someone like myself.
It's huge.
However, from here, right, it's a case of, I have Gwaihir on the opposite side of the board. I've specifically deployed Gwaihir here, where Saruman's over there. So Gwaihir can go threaten down there to try and get into Goroth and Ugluk, right? Whilst trying to just hold Saruman as much as I possibly can with the main force of my line, the Galadriel Captain Warband. So knocking him off his horse was a great play.
It was huge.
Yeah.
So it ended up, Gwaihir took his wound and his fate and his might, and then Saruman was still getting to him with his huge range on his magic. So I managed to compel him out of will.
Yep.
And got him into a position where Goroth could get into him.
Goroth, 4 pikemen, a wildman, and a berserker.
Sorry, a berserker and Stumpy. Pass me Stumpy.
Stumpy. Who is this bad boy?
Stumpy is a wildman of mine who I accidentally glued a Stumpy arm to. and he's got a very little arm and red hair, and he just does his best, and he always does something good. But he was
It's always the
in,
models with names. It's always the models with names
right?
that will
It's always
outperform.
Stumpy. And if you tell people in the start of the game, like I put him in a position where it's like, oh, target him. It's like, oh, it's Stumpy, and they go, I'm gonna kill Stumpy.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, Stumpy.
And this again, is a huge thing in this game is the whole psychological thing. If you've got one model that you personally love or show some form of affection to your opponent, in their head, they're gonna go, oh, is that Tim the Hobbit Ballista on Sean's side of the table? I'm going to kill him because that's going to affect him psychologically. So they're going for that, whilst you're going, I don't give a fuck about Tim. He's just a fucking hobbit. Whatever. I'm doing shit over here. And suddenly they're committing 3 warriors or whatever to go kill a single hobbit, and you're like, okay, awesome. Yeah. You do that.
I'm gonna shit on your argument. I have murdered Stumpy that many times in practice. Stumpy doesn't even come into my mind. There's no psychological games here. Stumpy is an absolute trash bag of a model. And the problem is I think I showed him disrespect in this game. No psychological, there's no tournament talk with this whatsoever. Because it got to a point where, so at this rate, the game had kind of whittled on. I managed to get a couple of compels on Uglock. The way it worked was where Galadriel and the captain's warband, I got to the middle objective first.
Yeah.
Through Sentinels and Compels, I had managed to hold off Goroth and Uglock back, who then had to move around a forest. Bear in mind that Uglock has woodland creature, to basically split Danny's main force, or I suppose like the powerful punching force, right, with the 2 medium tier heroes into my lines. Now, I had posted up a weak line of a couple of Arna warriors and a few elves, mainly with the bows. Now, that was my weak side because the bulk of my army was trying to deal with the bulk of Danny's army to hold him in that little, if you look at the bottom right, yeah, that was all that I had, where Gwaihir and a couple of elves were holding
just two warbands and models.
And that's it, right? So all I was trying to do was utilize my tricks to just go, stay back, and I'm only having to deal with warriors instead of heroes on top of warriors. Now, luckily, I had managed to get a kill on Uglock with bows, and that was lucky.
Was it bows?
Yeah, it was bows that whittled him.
Yeah,
bows that whittled him down. I then won a combat with my Fight 6 pike, and then managed to get the last wound on him as he had no fate, 1 wound to go.
D5.
So immediately in that point there, it kind of swung, and I was like, okay, I've just got to deal with Goroth. At that point, though, Saruman was in a position where he was always going to be within 24 inches of Gwaihir. Gwaihir's out of will. Saruman's got free reign to just go compel forward, and Danny's trying so desperately to get the trap and the wrap on Gwaihir to just kill him to then move forward and jump onto that center objective.
And I just bounced, and I had Berserker, Pikes, Stumpy, Goroth piercing, striking. It was
throwing the kitchen sink in, just throwing everything into the mixer.
Now, importantly at this point, I think in the top right photo, you'll see it. The far left objective, in that bottom left-hand corner of that photo is where Arvadui's warband started with Gwaihir. That's where Grima started. So Jay, having played against Grima a lot, wrapped him with 3 guys and went, you're never going to leave this space for the whole game, which in hindsight, I'm happy with because my crossbows decided, well, no one's going for that objective. We're going to walk up, all 4 of us, and just hold hands, and we're going to hold it. And they got there, and then Liam comes around and is like, last turn. And I'm like, yeah. So like, I've got this objective, and that far right objective where my hands are, I had guys on there too. And I'm like, Jay's not getting either. Now, at the start of this round talk, I mentioned reading the mission. Each of those objectives are worth 2 points. If you hold the center objective uncontested, you get 5.
Yeah, it's a big swing.
The big swing. Now, I had a Crebain that I had the potential to move into the middle that I didn't consider moving into the middle because I didn't read the mission.
And there was a lot going on.
And there was so much going on. So he went into Arvadui. He killed Arvadui.
No, he didn't.
Arvadui he cacard. No, I killed Abadui.
No, because Abadui then went into your banner.
Oh, I thought he killed Abadui. I spent my whole life thinking he killed Abadui.
Abadui won.
Anyway, but so I missed.
Abadui spent 4 turns trapped and rolled a 6. Why he didn't roll a single 6 the whole game?
And Abadui was just.
Abadui took the post and just slaughtered dudes left, right, and center.
So
anyway, keep going.
I misplayed a key model, which I move him in the middle. There was a Galadriel and a Sentinel with an axe, who maybe fluff, and then that drops his points to from a 5 to
a 3, I think.
A 3.
Yeah.
So then I win on. No, we draw, which becomes because you broke me in the end.
Yeah, true.
So it becomes
4-4.
No. Yeah, it becomes a 4-4. So if I'd read the mission, we could have drawn. So if we looked at, this is where it becomes really tricky. And if you're really thinking about trying to do well at a tournament, this is for you. So in the standings, I was above Jay by 5 points.
How I have
leading into round 5.
2 majors. This man goes through a minors.
Yeah. It was unreal. So if I looked at it, I could have won the tournament if A, I win the game, or B, I draw the game.
Oh, yes, okay.
I've not stood back and had that conversation with myself. And I think that's really important to consider if you're going to a tournament and you're thinking, oh, I might do well. It's not based on your opponent. It's these little conversations you have with yourself, and you're never going to jeopardize the enjoyment.
Yeah.
Because there was the first 3 turns. We gas bag when we play, and we laugh, and we have a good time, and we play competitive games. Yeah. We played 3 turns of the game, and we didn't say a word to each other. And then a spectator was like, "You guys haven't spoken in like 20 minutes," and we were like, "Yeah." Oh. And then we were like, "Okay, this is just a game."
Yeah. I think we were trying so hard to give each other a good game for the final game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because Dan and I have played our armies into each other probably 4 or 5 times before this, and it was a case of I know his tricks, he knows my tricks. I know how he plays, he knows how I play. What's the advantage here? And I got the early snowball from capitalizing on perimeter deployment. I think it was wrong. I think Danny deployed his warbands in the wrong order, started doing his sorcerer's blasting. And then from there, it's also a case of, I then put Danny on the back foot, and then I got the horse kills. So things were looking good in my favor. I was in the middle, and then as soon as if Danny had to put the Grabane over, I sentinel him first, and if not, I compel him, or I then get my backline and surround that Grabane in one go because I had the movement, and I killed that Grabane and used the last 2 Might on Galadriel to get it done.
And it becomes, in one of those conversations, Sean, you brought it up, it becomes a certainty.
Yeah.
Whereas it's like I'd put myself in a position in that last turn where I put 4 crossbow shots on Galadriel and I put a sorcerer's blast on Galadriel in an attempt to do a wound.
Correct.
That wasn't a certainty.
Yeah.
Whereas even if I got the Crabane into that position to contest the objective, Jay had the potential to kill it certainly.
Yeah.
And it's just using that statistic, using that math, and just like I put myself in a position where math was not in my favor.
Now,
look, it was a great.
That's good. Yeah, no, it sounds like it was a phenomenal game. But I was going to say we'll start wrapping this round up. But a question I definitely wanted to ask you there, Danny, is do you feel like the pressure of the top table might have got to you a little bit there? Just because Jay in previous tournaments has done very, very well, hits top table quite regularly. You're starting to push that top table at tournaments now. So do you think that might have played into it a little bit?
I think turn 3 or 4 when Jay's dice, he had a bad turn of rolling, and there was a moment where I was like, hang on,
I've got this.
I'm in with a chance here. Because I think you go into these like situations where we perceive it as a high stakes situation, and as people we will stress, and that's great. We want to be able to stress about it, but we want to also be able to make good decisions in those moments.
Yeah.
I think being a new situation, I clearly stressed because I was like, oh gosh, and I'm starting to fumble, like just little decisions, like where do I put Grima? Like how do I deploy my warbands? Like it affects that, and I definitely 100% stressed because Jay's such a good player, and we play all the time, and I know he's a good player. And then it took about halfway through the game to realize, like, I've actually played Jay before, and we played really tight games, and I've beaten Jay with this list. It's like I can do this. Like, it's just when you're in those, so against an opponent can, it's like it's a bit too late. So it's like go to a game, remember it's a game. First and foremost, and just try your best.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, I fluffed it.
Happens to the best of us. We've all fluffed it. Even those of us that hit the top table semi-regularly fluff it. I did it at Clash. It happens to all of us. But we'll jump into...
Ended up being a 6-4 in the end, and I think we'll leave it at that. Otherwise, we'll keep on rambling. So thank you for coming on the show with us, Danny. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you. I hope to do more.
We'll do
some reps.
We'll get you back in, absolutely.
There's going to be some exciting things coming to the channel. So hopefully, look, this is what Sean and I had discussed at the start. We want to go quite in depth into the games, into the list, into the mindset of a competitive player, if you can call us that. I don't really know. Trying to be a competitive player and thinking about the tournaments and not just the game, outside of the game, the list, the ladders, all that sort of stuff. So Sean and I have a very contrasting perspective on the game. Sean's a skew boy, I'm a toolkit boy, and then I'd like to get as many people on as I possibly can, so that way we can just talk about all aspects of the hobby. So moving forward, you're going to see what we call tourney talks, which will be competitive views, tournament recaps, maybe a couple of battle reports here from there. Battle reports in a different style where we're going to go through the movement phase. Why are we doing
Love
this?
That.
You know what I mean? Like a really, almost like a tutorial battle report. And that's what I am hoping that this can be a pillar channel for people to build and go, hey, go check those guys out. They actually made a bit of sense, or they made no sense, but at least I got a bit of a giggle. And then the last bit will be our hobby talk. So I'm hoping to showcase as many people in this hobby, because that is the single biggest draw card, is the amazing people in this community and the passion and dedication that they show to this hobby. It's just outstanding. With many like metal models, they produce diamonds, bro. So
get mum about us.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Tell your mum, tell your dad, tell everyone. But from me, from me, from Jay, from Danny, to you guys watching, have a good night.